Hello, and today we will talk about a few novelties introduced by Lange Söhne, but also how the brand introduced this to us, because this was rather nicely done, as I was pretty spoiled by being invited by the German brand to Florence, Italy, and they chose this astounding setting for a special reason. When you think of Florence, you think art, craft, you think about the Renaissance, its amazing architectural achievements. And when you see how all this still draws so much attention and respect, well, you get it why Lange chose this city to introduce the sixth member in its Handwerkskunst collection. This is the fine handcraft collection of the brand, the Métiers line applied to certain models of the brand. But before getting to the timepieces, and yes, I used the plural because there were some other ones and some pretty cool ones, so before doing this I just wanted to add something on a very different level. Generally, when I'm invited to such events, well, often the people I encounter there are either other members of the press, most often specialized in watchmaking, but also collectors and end customers. But on this occasion, and using today's terminology of new job description, well, there were many influencers slash Instagrammers, and of course not all really related to watchmaking, mainly fashion and transporters, and some with the ultimate goal of being trendsetters themselves. So what does this tell us? Well, we all know that a brand needs awareness to exist, and even if you are a super highly regarded brand, and for good reasons like Lange Söhne, well, you still nevertheless need to reach out to wider audiences to get your message across. In this case, the goal was to highlight with some atelier and workshop visits some of the parallels that can be made with artisanship, craftsmanship, creativity seen in other fields of the creative and artistic process, and probably more known to a wider audience, a wider public, such as sculptors, restoration artisans, fabric manufacturers, designers, typographers, and even winemakers, and the craftsmanship associated with fine watchmaking. So it's not because we're talking about mechanical art that it can't be considered as art too, especially when you add this extra layer seen in the Handwerkskunst collection. So let's now go back to the watches themselves, and before going more in details about this 1815 Rattrapante Perpetual Calendar Handwerkskunst presented just now, so Lange Söhne also introduced a new variation of existing models with some pretty sexy blue dials. I know this is not necessarily a huge originality, as quite a number of other brands have done so in the past few months, but I really don't care. Well, first of all, I like blue, I have always liked blue, and I think it kind of shows. Well, secondly, I've always told you this, but on one day, yes, one day I will get myself a Lange one. It's been on the dream list for a very long time, too long actually. And to see both of these things combined, well, you can imagine the effect it had on me. All in all, Lange presented 4 blue color dial watches coming in white gold cases. The Lange one, that's the classic version with the hand-wound movement. The Lange one Daymatic with weekly day indication and automatic movement this time. Yeah, that's the one that is knocking on my door right now. And 2 other models in the Saxonia collection, one automatic model and one manual wound model. So I personally think that the result of this combination of blue dial and white gold case modernizes these timepieces, but again, and like I've always said, this is all very personal. Okay, so now let's talk about the star of the show, and to do so, let's listen to Anthony De Haas, product director of the brand, who will give us a bit more insights into this spectacular timepiece limited to only 20. And just for info, the 1815 Rattrapante Perpetual Calendar is a model first introduced in 2013 actually, and it won the Grand Complication category of the GPHD at the time, and now becomes this 6th member of this Handwerkskunst collection of Lange Söhne.
Today we present the 1815 Rattrapante Perpetual Calendar, but in a very special occasion, in the Handwerkskunst. You know that unpronounceable name for non-Germans, which just means hand craftsmanship. And it's an extreme, an extravaganza. Maybe that's why we are in Italy now. And it's enamel. It's a 5-piece enamel dial on the front. We have a half-hunter case back with partly enamel and a beautiful relief engravement of the goddess of the moon, Luna. And of course we continued the starry engravement, in relief engravement, even in the complicated movement. So we have a complete packages of hand craftsmanship. You need to do something with the movement, so we went in and we tried where we could do to also integrate with the same theme, the stars and the sky and the moon. So it's a lot of calculations, how to cope with that energy household, as I call it. But it's tricky, but it's very fascinating. People think it's very fascinating. You push the pusher on the left side, so the rattrapante, and suddenly you see two stop hands. So the one continues, the other stopped, and you stop, and you push again, and it joins the chrono hand again, and then it's fascinating for people. But it's for the watchmaker, it's a tricky complication to adjust. The case diameter is 41.9 millimeter. And in fact, the half-hunter case built up a little bit of extra height, but it's within a millimeter. So we gave our best to reduce the thickness as much as possible. And the first feedback is magnificent, so we're very happy.
Well, thanks for your time, and I have to admit that this was my very first day in Florence. I know that that's my mistake, because this is such an incredibly beautiful city and not too far away from Geneva, so to feel so much history around you is really quite something special. And despite the flocks of tourists there, well, it remains a total must for everybody. So all the best, see you soon, have a great day.